This past weekend, the 2026 Pokemon Go Taiwan qualifiers were held. There was so much at stake for this tournament, as if battlers who competed did well, they could earn a guaranteed qualification to the Pokemon Go World Championships, which is taking place later this summer in San Francisco, California. At the end of a long weekend of battling, to the surprise of absolutely no one, Aegislash once again won a tournament. This is Aegislash's third win in its past 4 tournaments, and it has established itself as a premier Pokemon in this meta. The trainer who won the Taiwan qualifiers, their name is Nico Paradise, and this is their team. Aegislash, Tinkaton, Feraligatr, Pangoro, Licky, and Stunfisk. Their round 1 opponent for the tournament was Chansey, who is running a team with Shadow Quagsire, Tinkaton, Guzzlord, Corsola, Fortress on Volt Switch, and Togekiss. Battlers locked in for game number 1, and it was a pretty neutral lead, all things considered. Licky to the Fortress. Licky does have a pretty significant pacing advantage, able to fire off the Shadow Ball on perfect charge attack timing before Fortress is able to make the Rock Tomb. Fortress will put up an early shield, overfarm perfectly, making sure to fire off the Rock Tomb on good charge attack timing. But Licky is very bulky, so Licky shrugs off the damage and immediately hits back with the debuff Shadow Ball. Taking a look at the Pokemon that are in the back, Feraligatr and Tinkaton both are not big fans of Fortress, so neutralizing this Fortress on the lead will be critical. Licky will put up the shield, now can look to fire off the Shadow Ball, opponent safe switches a Guzzlord, and that is something you cannot do into a Tinkaton team. Tinkaton and Pangoro, 2 very strong Guzzlord answers. The opponent made a calculated gamble that neither was in the back, but here's the Tinkaton, and now this Guzzlord is probably just going to get fully farmed down. Guzzlord just has absolutely no coverage for Tinkaton. Guzzlord forced to throw Brutal Swing after Brutal Swing after Brutal Swing, and it just does nothing. Switch timer's up, back in comes the Fortress, but Fortress will be unable to take the knockout here with the Sand Tomb. There's so much energy loaded on the Licky, in it comes, and that's perfect charge attack timing, firing off the Shadow Ball. The debuffs have been reset, Fortress gets knocked out. The opponent lost so much HP on the Guzzlord that even a Body Slam probably threatens here. They do bring the Guzzlord back in. Body Slam will take the knockout in the back. They have Shadow Quagsire, and this game is over. Quagsire is going to be winning charge attack priority over the Licky, but there's a Feraligatr. There's still 100 energy available on a Tinkaton. There's just no path forward for the opponent in this game. Feraligatr banks a Hydro Cannon, the quick switch into Tinkaton. Tinkaton Hammer connects, and that damage is devastating. Quagsire forced to fire off an Aqua Tail on charge attack priority to deny the Bulldoze. But from here, this is a very straightforward win for the Feraligatr. Feraligatr can just unleash Hydro Cannons. The Quagsire has basically no HP remaining, and Feraligatr's never going to get knocked out here. Quagsire does land the Stone Edge, but it's just too little too late. Feraligatr makes the Hydro Cannon. This is easily more than enough to secure the knockout, and the opponent took a gamble safe switching Guzzlord. It backfires in a big way, and that cost them game number 1. The battlers lock in for game number 2, and it's a dominant lead win. Stunfisk into the Volt Switch Fortress. And the Volt Switch Fortress is not pivoting out, so it looks like the opponent is core broken by the Stunfisk. They're going to stay in, launch the Sand Tomb, and they are not pivoting, which means Stunfisk is going to get to land charge attacks onto this Fortress. Fortress going to go for Sand Tomb number 2. Even a 3rd Sand Tomb would fail to take the knockout. I do wonder if it's the Togekiss lurking in the back, because that would be a pretty big problem for Chansey and a reason why they're forced to stay in. In the meantime, Stunfisk is going to keep spamming out these Mud Bombs. Suddenly, Fortress is very low. Fortress will connect with a 3rd Sand Tomb, but again, it's just simply never going to be enough to secure the KO. Stunfisk gets the full farm down, exits with quite a lot of energy. Wouldn't be surprised to see the Quagsire brought in here, so Stunfisk is going to be forced to stay in, because there's only one answer to Quagsire on this team, and it's the Feraligatr. However, if the final Mon is Togekiss, there's a secondary Togekiss answer in the back with Aegislash. Feraligatr puts up the shield, calling the Stone Edge, getting the shield call right. In the back is Togekiss, and the read was correct. Togekiss is completely walled by Aegislash. There's nothing it can do. Aegislash can absorb Aurasphere after Aurasphere as it continues to march towards the back-to-back Gyro Balls. Switch timer will be up for the opponent after Gyro Ball number 2, so Aegislash could consider going for a Shadow Ball on the second just to try and cover for the catch. Back-to-back charge stacks are reached. Aegislash's time to shine, switching into the Blade form, unleashing Gyro Ball. Togekiss will put up the shield. Aegislash goes for the Shadow Ball, calling the catch, and the opponent goes for it. What a read. Down goes Quagsire. Back in comes Feraligatr into the Togekiss, and there's just no path forward for the opponent in this game. The Aegislash is still healthy. The Feraligatr has an Ice Beam. there is nothing that Togekiss can do, and the opponent knows it. They're just going to be no shielding. Ice Beam knocks out the Togekiss, and that's going to be a round 1 win. His round 2 opponent is Gamebird, a very strong trainer who's running Licky Licky, Feraligatr, Diggersby, Grumpig, Shadow Bug-Bite Fortress, and Togekiss. The battlers lock in for game number 1. It's going to be a pretty neutral lead, Feraligatr into Togekiss. Arguably, there's 2 significantly stronger answers in the back. Oh, what a beautiful catch, farming up 7 Shadow Claws and then catching onto the Unova Stunfisk. The opponent has Diggersby in the back. This could get bad very, very quickly. They're rebanking a ton of energy, and they have it. In comes Diggersby. This is an ABB team where the goal is to try and bait out the Diggersby to set up the Aegislash. Now, the Stunfisk does have a pretty massive energy head start, but this matchup is a pretty miserable one. Mud Bomb after Mud Bomb connecting into the Diggersby. The Diggersby still not even half HP yet, and Stunfisk is just going to let itself fully get knocked out here. Scorching Sands lands. Oh, it looks like didn't quite take the knockout. The Mud Bomb is preserved, and back in comes Feraligatr. Hydro Cannon lands, big damage on a Diggersby. In comes Togekiss, and they will win charge attack priority. Even though Feraligatr would survive here, Feraligatr needs to try and force shields down. When shields are down, that is when Aegislash is at its strongest. So Feraligatr puts up the shield, getting the shield back from Togekiss. Feraligatr reaching for the next Hydro, but once again will lose charge attack priority. Using the final shield makes too much sense here because if the opponent shields back, then this sets up the Zero's endgame. And with Diggersby already very low, the Aegislash should win the Zeros against all of Gamebird's remaining Pokemon. Aura Sphere will finally be knocking out Feraligatr, but the damage is done. All shields are down. It's time. Send in the Aegislash. Togekiss banks energy. There's the pivot out. It's going to be the Shadow Bug-Bite Fortress in the back. And the fact that the Fortress is Shadow will betray it in this endgame. A normal Fortress can survive a Shadow Ball, but a Shadow Fortress will get absolutely destroyed. Aegislash farms up to 100 energy, building up to the back-to-back. Fortress will lose charge attack priority, which means a second Sand Tomb is going to land, but even that is not going to be a problem for Aegislash. Aegislash firing up the Shadow Ball, switching into the Blade form. Shadow Ball is going to connect, able to get the Psycho Cut down after, and looking to pivot out into the Stunfisk. Stunfisk does have a charge attack loaded. Opponent waiting down their timer here. What are they going to be bringing in? They bring in the Diggersby, and they get sniped down by the Mud Bomb. The energy stored from earlier pays dividends. Diggersby gets KO'd. Back in comes the Togekiss, winning charge attack priority, but the Aegislash is back in shield form. This Aura Sphere is going to do absolutely nothing. Magnificent Aegislash play there. Able to snipe down the Diggersby, save the Gyro Ball. Gyro Ball KOs the Togekiss, and that's going to be a game 1 win. The battlers lock in for game number 2, and it's Licky Licky into Fortress. Nico has to be very careful of a catch onto Licky Licky. Nico overfarms, watching for the catch, but Gamebird stays in. The mind game's already extreme in this game number 2, with Gamebird gaining an early advantage by not actually going for the catch. Debuffed Shadow Ball will still do quite a lot of damage. Licky Licky gets Shadow Ball number 2, and again, no catch from Gamebird. The fact that no catch came through means it's highly likely that the Licky Licky is not in the back. In comes Pangoro, but disaster strikes as it's going to be answered with Togekiss. This is not great for Pangoro. Pangoro is going to be completely walled. However, there's a very strong answer to Togekiss energy in the back with the Aegislash. Pangoro launches close combat. That's going to be double resisted, but Pangoro is just trying to limit the farm as in comes Aegislash. Aegislash is up a shield, but it's down a ton of energy, and it's going to have so much work to do if it wants to try and win this game. There's a pivot out. In the back is Diggersby for Gamebird. Diggersby was basically the worst case scenario Pokemon to see at the back, and it's highly likely that Gamebird is going to be winning this game in number 2. Unfortunately, the Pangoro save switch, if it saw anything other than that Togekiss, would have been in a good spot, but Gamebird had the Togekiss, the Pangoro got completely shut down, and that just set up the Aegislash to be in an endgame from which there is absolutely no escape. The Gyro Ball does do big damage, but the Fire Punch from Diggersby is going to force Aegislash back into the shield form. Aegislash now going to be taking super effective damage from Scorching Sands, and Aegislash, as it farms up closer and closer to the back-to-back Gyro Balls, just really doesn't have a path forward in this game. Aegislash will play it out to the bitter end, as Gyro Ball into the Diggersby will take the knockout, but in comes Togekiss. Aura Sphere will be securing the knockout, and that is going to be the game. Save switching Pangoro into a Togekiss team is a very big gamble. If the Togekiss was not back there, it would have won the game on the spot, but it was, and unfortunately that ended up causing the loss. The battlers lock in for the winner-take-all game number 3, and it's a dominant lead for Nico. Aegislash into Togekiss. There's the save switch into the Bug-Bite Fortress. This is a very strong matchup for the Aegislash, but Aegislash needs to be preserved to wall off Togekiss later in the game. So Aegislash will stay on the field, fire off the Shadow Ball to get an early shield advantage, and then look to pivot out. In comes Licky. Licky will be instantly Rock Tomb debuffed. So Licky's Shadow Ball not nearly as threatening as it typically would be, but because Shadow Fortress is not the tankiest Pokemon around, 2 Shadow Balls should still be able to pick up the knockout. Game Bird will have the ability to double shield for a switch advantage, but in doing so, that would set up the Aegislash with a shield advantage, which is a very scary Pokemon to deal with. Licky puts up the shield, now going to get Sand Tomb debuffed, fire off the Shadow Ball. Will Game Bird double down and play for switch? Yes, Game Bird is selling out for switch advantage, so it's highly likely the final Pokemon is Diggersby. In comes Pangoro. Pangoro immediately going to be no shielding. Pangoro will have to fire off a Night Slash here, or a second Sand Tomb will be reached. Pangoro unable to get the farm down, and now Pangoro is forced to burn a shield. This is where this game could get off the rails. In comes Aegislash. It's going to be the Diggersby in the back, and this game is going to come down to a very awkward 50-50. Is Aegislash able to fire off the Gyro Ball and then combo with the close combat? Because Aegislash needs to build up to the back-to-back Gyro Balls, using one to get the Diggersby into close combat range and saving the second one for the Togekiss. So the game comes down to this. It's a 50-50. Does Nico go for the snipe? Does Game Bird call it? Aegislash switches into the blade form, firing off the Gyro Ball. Gyro Ball lands, throws the Psycho Cut, gets the combo play, and there's no switch from Game Bird. Close combat takes the knockout. In comes Togekiss. It doesn't get enough energy to make a move, and Aegislash is going to take the win. Oh my goodness, what a game. Aegislash switches to the blade form. Down goes Togekiss, and Nico is on to round number 3. Nico's opponent in round number 3 is Yodata, running almost the identical team to Game Bird. 5 of the 6 are the same, but running Wigglytuff instead of Togekiss. The battlers lock in for game number 1, and it's deja vu all over again as Aegislash once again leads into the Fairy type. Yodata safe switches into Feraligatr, answered with the Pangoro. Yodata doesn't know it yet, but switch advantage will not save him, because this is an ABA Steel team. It's Aegislash lead Tinkaton in the back, so even if Yodata is able to win switch advantage in this game, it's not going to matter, because where is the Wigglytuff going to go? Wigglytuff's either getting one-shot by a Gigaton Hammer or getting one-shot by a Gyro Ball. And Nico knows it. He's going to be letting this go, and now he can go for an aggressive farm down with the Tinkaton. At this point, Yodata knows the Wigglytuff is useless. Yodata's gonna have to try and sweep and 1v2 with Diggersby. Now, Diggersby into 2 steel types should be favored, but this is where the energy advantage on Tinkaton is going to be critical. Tinkaton lands Gigaton Hammer. That is devastating damage onto the Diggersby. Diggersby hits back with the Scorching Sands, but Tinkaton puts up the shield. Tinkaton goes for Gigaton Hammer. There's the catch. Yodata is throwing away the Wigglytuff. But Nico goes for the undercharge. Oh my goodness, what an undercharge! That sets up the perfect Fairy Wind farm down. Nico Paradise, unbelievable plays. And Yodata is out of options. Yodata is just gonna let the Gigaton Hammer go. There's nothing he can do. And Nico Paradise is up 1-0. The battlers lock in for game number 2, Aegislash, this time leading into Diggersby. The ABA Steel line was so strong when it led into Wigglytuff, but leading into Diggersby, this is going to be a substantially more difficult game. Aegislash, however, can always just look to overfarm, looking to absorb energy in the shield form before it switches into the blade form and inflicts devastating damage. Diggersby overfarming, not wanting to fire off energy until Aegislash switches into the blade form. There it is, 100 energy, the form change, Aegislash launching Gyro Ball, Aegislash overfarming, taking advantage of the higher energy generation from Psycho Cut in blade form, and launching the Gyro Ball into the Protect Shield. That is going to be a CMP tie. Diggersby should fire off the Fire Punch here, because even a Fire Punch would take the knockout. But now Aegislash is back into the shield form, and Aegislash is always going to be able to absorb a Scorching Sands. So even though this is technically an ABA weakness, look at how strong Aegislash is. Aegislash still holding its own against Diggersby. The fact that this Diggersby is on Quick Attack is a big benefit to the Aegislash. Aegislash launches the Gyro Ball. Diggersby will fire off energy, but at this point, the Aegislash has more than done its job. It pressured away both shields, and now in comes Pangoro. Pangoro never going to be shielded, assuming it's going to be Wigglytuff somewhere in the back, but the hope is that Tinkaton is going to do pretty well. In comes Wigglytuff, and there's the reveal. Tinkaton right on cue. Yodata made the read that surely with one steel type out of the way, the Wigglytuff would be strong in the back, but no. In comes Tinkaton. Tinkaton at -1, firing off Gigaton Hammer. Gigaton Hammer is able to connect and pick up the 1-hit KO. In the back, it's going to be the Bug Bite Fortress, and the energy on Pangoro is going to be game-winning. In comes Pangoro, there's the combination play, and Fortress is never going to survive. Close combat, takes the knockout, all that's left in the back is the low HP Diggersby. Pangoro farms down, and Neko Paradise is on to the winners finals. Neko's opponent in winners finals is Michang 1978, running a team with Licky Licky, Empoleon, Shadow Quagsire, Corsola, Shadow Bugbite Fortress, and Togekiss, and this will still be a best of 3 series. Battlers lock in for game number 1, and it's a dominant lead win for Nico, leading Aegislash into the Shadow Bugbite Fortress. This is a dominant lead win. A lot of trainers like leading weak to the Aegislash, assuming it's going to be in the back. Oh, there's a catch attempt, trying to catch a Shadow Ball onto Licky Licky, but in comes Pangoro, and I don't want to call it already, but this game already feels over. Pangoro more than happy to absorb a body slam. Pangoro can even tank a second body slam, and then just farm up to the back-to-back close combats. First body slam is going to land. Now the opponent has to decide. If they double shield, then they're just getting swept by the Aegislash. They have to let it go, but now there's a close combat that's going to be landing onto whatever they send in. Michang chose to send in Quagsire. Quagsire gets shredded. Back in comes the Fortress, but Aegislash is already at 100 energy. This game has gone off the rails so quickly. Sand Tomb lands, another Sand Tomb locked and loaded, but Aegislash can just pressure both shields, and then a 2-0 shield for Alligator is just simply going to be unbeatable. That's going to be Shadow Ball number 1, launched by Aegislash. Quick switch into the Blade form. Shadow Ball is going to be shielded, immediately followed by Shadow Ball number 2. And this will be very easy cleanup duty for the Feraligatr. In comes Feraligatr, just racing to get to the Hydro Cannon. A catch wouldn't even matter at this point. The damage is going to be deadly no matter where it lands. That actually was a charge attack priority tie. No shield comes out from the Feraligatr. Feraligatr calling a Sand Tomb. They do go for the Rock Tomb. That's going to set up a farm down. But the good news is it's still not going to matter. There's still an Aegislash, and Aegislash can just simply never be farmed down here. So it looks like Nico may have tried to go for the 2-shield flex there, and then ended up backfiring just a little bit. But the good news is the Fortress is low enough that Aegislash should be able to Psycho Cut it down and take the win. But that did get a little bit spooky once that Rock Tomb landed. Aegislash launches Shadow Ball, switches into the Blade form, and now gets to use the significantly better fast move pressure from a Psycho Cut than charging. In comes the Fortress. Aegislash gets the Psycho Cut down, and that's a game 1 win for Nico. We've got more neutral leads in game number 2. Licky Licky into the Shadow Fortress. Licky Licky get a farm up, watching for the catch. Unfortunately, no Pangoro in the back this time to punish the Licky Licky save switch. However, Licky Licky is up so much energy that there's a very real opportunity for Licky Licky just to stay in and try and win switch this way, and then put that Shadow Fortress onto the Aegislash later in the game. Wow, the body slam spam is so real. Licky Licky just shredding through the opposing Licky Licky. Opponent now critically low as they'll finally start to fire off some energy. Body slam will barely miss the knockout here as the opponent fires off body slam number 2. This should be a 1 HP survive. Licky Licky no shields. Licky Licky survives, but there's a switch as Michang is going to pivot back into the Fortress. Nice play there. Fortress unable to quite get the snipe down, but now in comes Aegislash. Aegislash more than happy to absorb multiple Sand Tombs. The Bug Bites are never going to do a lot of damage, but Nico is really trusting in the fact that the Feraligatr as the final Pokemon is going to put in work in the end game. Michang is over-farming massively, gonna fire off the Sand Tomb on charge attack priority, but this is where Aegislash is so incredibly strong, because Aegislash in the shield form is gonna be losing almost every charge attack priority tie. So it can absorb the energy while in its bulky form, and then switch over to the Blade form to inflict devastating damage with Shadow Ball. There's a simul switch. Michang tried to go for the Shadow Ball catch, but Nico read him like a book, and now gets to fire off the Hydro Cannon. That's gonna be a charge attack priority tie. The final shield goes down, and that means Michang is now gonna be in an incredible amount of trouble. You do not want to be shields down against an Aegislash. Feraligatr gonna take a Shadow Ball for its trouble, but Feraligatr not to be denied, able to make a final Hydro Cannon, getting rid of that Licky Licky. Now there's an Aegislash and a shield. It's Togekiss in the back, and this game is over. Aegislash just gets the farm up to 100 energy. Aegislash will put up the shield. Aegislash farms up. There's the switch, and in comes Fortress. But the Aegislash still had 2 Protect Shields to work with. Aegislash now gets the Shadow Ball into that Fortress, and will get the Gyro Ball into the Togekiss. Aegislash is just an absolute force of nature. It will not be denied. Picking up the first knockout, picking up the second knockout, and Nico's moving on to the Grand Finals. The Grand Finals is actually going to be familiar territory, as Nico is going to be playing against Michang once again. Now, Michang, I believe, defeated Weekend in the losers finals to earn a rematch in the grand finals. The battlers lock in for game number 1 of the grand finals. Pangoro into Licky Licky, a dominant lead win for Nico. There's an immediate pivot out from Michang, save switching into the Quagsire. Quagsire instantly answered with the Feraligatr. Feraligatr will have to go down a shield in this matchup because this is a Mud Bomb Quagsire. Quagsire in the zeros will always be able to make it to 2 Mud Bombs, and that will be enough to secure the knockout. So Feraligatr is going to expend at least 1 Protect Shield, and there's still the Aegislash lurking in the back, which is very happy that it got to dodge that Quagsire. Mud Bomb connects, dealing some pretty significant damage onto that Feraligatr, but Feraligatr will be able to inflict some very nice damage in return as the opponent looks to bring in Licky Licky. But they don't bring in Licky Licky, they bring in Togekiss. I guess they're reading Aegislash in the back, and they just know this game is over. Ice Beam lands, Feraligatr farms down. They made the read. They said, you know what? It has to be the Aegislash in the back, and I just simply cannot win. The full line call from Nico in game number 1. There's just absolutely nothing Michang could ever do. Close combat from Pangoro is going to be no-shielded, and that is about the fastest game of competitive Pokemon Go you'll ever see. Nico runs back the game 1 line in game number 2 and is immediately on the defensive because Michang has adjusted. Michang realized that line was so strong for Nico in game number 1, but if that line led into Togekiss, it would have basically no counterplay. So he save switches Feraligatr, is forced to put up a shield as Togekiss fires off the Aura Sphere, and now in comes Licky Licky to completely shut down Feraligatr's energy. Feraligatr launches back-to-back Hydro Cannons. Licky Licky just simply does not care. Feraligatr in a really tough spot, going to double down and double shield as Licky Licky fires off energy. Licky Licky will make another body slam. Nico is selling out for switch advantage, hoping that even going down 2 shields will be enough to win the game with that switch advantage. Feraligatr fires off Hydro Cannon. Will Michang shield? No, Michang is going to let it go, and switch advantage has been won. Feraligatr reaching for the Ice Beam, able to get there, but losing charge attack priority, so all that energy will go down the drain. Now, Aegislash comes into wall Togekiss, but the Pangoro is going to have to win a 0-2 shield scenario. It's Pangoro versus Quagsire in the endgame, and this Quagsire up 2 shields is going to be game winning for the opponent. The Pangoro just takes way too much damage. Pangoro's going for the Hail Mary win con, going for the close combat. Do they respect it? Yes, they do. They put up the shield, and unfortunately for Nico, that is going to be a game loss. We are going to be going to a winner-take-all game number 3. Because Aegislash is in the position that it can never be in. Aegislash is down a shield, it's down energy, and this Quagsire's pacing is just relentless. Mud Bomb number 1 connects. There's a pivot out into the Togekiss, and this is such a nice play from Michang. Michang preserves the energy on the Quagsire, going to force the Aegislash to switch into the Blade form, and once it's in the Blade form, it's just going to be knocked out by the Mud Bomb. Really nice understanding of Aegislash mechanics there by Michang. Michang gets the equalizer, and we're moving on to game number 3. The leads for the final match of the Taiwan qualifiers are Aegislash for Nico into the Licky Licky for Michang. This is a matchup that can go either way. The zeros are typically going to be favored to the Aegislash, but if shields come up, then Licky Licky can make things quite uncomfortable. Shadow Ball will hit for big super effective damage, but importantly, Shadow Ball is unable to pick up the 2-hit KO. Aegislash trying to reach for the Gyro Ball, Licky Licky able to outpace, and now this Aegislash is going to be very, very low. Aegislash did lose charge attack priority, which is almost always going to be the goal. Aegislash switching over to the Blade form, launching the Gyro Ball. Gyro Ball is going to be no shielded, and actually going for the Shadow Ball, calling out a catch attempt. The Shadow Ball will be shielded, as they predicted it would be the Gyro Ball. Aegislash tries to make the Gyro Ball, unable to get there, as Licky Licky will fire off the Body Slam. Body Slam will knock out, but now in comes the Stunfisk. After Togekiss was such a problem in game number 2, Nico has run a line that is triple strong into the Kiss. Shadow Ball comes out from Licky Licky. Licky Licky throwing on alignment, just guaranteeing whatever damage that it can get. But if the Togekiss is lurking in the back, and it's highly likely that it is because they need a strong answer to Pangoro, then the Togekiss is just going to have nowhere it can go. Discharge is going to land. It's going to be Quagsire answered with the Feraligatr. Quagsire launching Mud Bomb. Shield comes up from the Feraligatr, and the opponent still lets it to pivot. Is it the Togekiss? Yes, it is, and that should seal it. Feraligatr launching the Ice Beam. Togekiss puts up a shield. Togekiss so desperately needs to make the double Aura Sphere, but they just simply do not have the energy. Feraligatr can actually survive the Aura Sphere as well. Aura Sphere lands. Feraligatr holds on, and Feraligatr will now get to take the knockout with the Ice Beam. Ice Beam will be the end of Togekiss. Back in comes the Stunfisk, And Stunfisk does have a lot of residual energy. Firing off the Mud Bomb will not take the 2-hit KO, but it will come very close to securing the knockout. Quagsire would need a farm down to win, and it looks like they can't even get that. They're just simply going to be too low. Quagsire deep into the red, forced to fire off energy, but it's just going to take one Shadow Claw from the Feraligatr. In comes Feraligatr, getting the claw down, and Nico Paradise wins the Taiwan qualifiers and wins a guaranteed invitation to the Pokemon Go World Championships, which are later this summer in San Francisco, California. All in all, big congratulations to Nico Paradise. A massive run to win the Taiwan qualifiers and for earning your invitation to the World Championships later this year. I think it's very cool to see Aegislash win a third tournament. Out of the last 4 tournaments, 3 have been won by Aegislash, and they've all been won by pretty unique teams. This team definitely took some inspiration from Arrow with his ABA Steel of Tinkaton and Aegislash, but instead of running a Dartrix, ended up running a Pangoro, as Pangoro is another Pokemon that has insanely cool shield pressure. It's really cool to see these Aegislash teams evolve, because none of the Aegislash teams are identical. They all look pretty different, they all have different supporting Pokemon, but they all end up having an incredible amount of success. Thank you so much for watching. My name is HomeSliceHenry, and this is More Slice Henry, my second channel where I cover content primarily related to the Championship Series and primarily related to just any content that I want to post that I don't feel fits on the main channel. If you enjoyed watching today's video, please do leave a like on it and subscribe to the channel if you have not, and I'll see you guys next week.